whatever we suggested for each other, we just tried it out regardless of whether we believed in it or not. We're like, hey man,
Yeah.
just try this line out. We didn't sit there and go, oh, that's not my style.
Um,
That's not what I'm doing. We were like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And 90% of the time it works because it's coming from such a different perspective
Yeah.
than what you're thinking.
Greetings, everyone. Come on in and have a seat up front to the Funny Muscle Podcast. If you're here, then you're looking to learn how to create laughs like a pro. So please help me welcome to the stage your co-host to help you do that, economics professor and open micer Chris Stifler and comedian turned author Mike Lucas.
We go to IHOP, that's how I roll, because they got pictures of food on the menu. Problem is, I already know what an omelet looks like. I know what a chocolate chip pancake looks like. Anybody here ever been to a Korean restaurant? Yeah, there's no pictures of food on the menu. There's no English either, just those Korean symbols. I'm trying to impress my date and order for her. I'm like, all right. She will take the sideways comb on fire. And what do you recommend, the bubble with feet or the half-finished game of hangman? So I ordered the half-finished game of hangman, turns out it's freaking chocolate chip pancakes.
There we go. We're in.
Oh, there he is. Oh,
I like this sold out show behind you.
yeah. Do you like this? This is Brad Garrett's club,
Oh, okay, in Vegas, right?
Vegas. Yeah, yeah. I put that in my background to remind people of what I used to do.
Okay. That's
How you
nice.
doing?
Nice house room. I'm good. I'm good. Everything's
This is
good.
Chris, my podcast partner, Chris Stifler.
What's up,
well,
man?
thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm very pleased to bring our guest on to the podcast this week. He is a American comedian and actor of Indian descent who appeared on the hit reality show Last Comic Standing 2. And I didn't know this, made it to the semifinals, which is very impressive. And then he has his a full set on national television on Comedy Central's last live at Gotham, which is very cool and a great club, by the way. So please welcome to the show, Paul Varghese.
All right. Thank you for having me.
We'll have we'll probably edit in some amazing applause break right there, or it'll just be me talking about it. So thanks for being here. You are the first comedian of Indian descent that we've had on the show, and you have been the first Indian descent comedian in a lot of cases. And so I wanted to sort of talk about that first, but just real quickly, to tell us about yourself and you know, our listeners are all new comedians getting in the business, so they might not have heard of you. Remind us of who you are and you know what you've done so far.
Well, I started back in '01, June of '01,
Wow.
in Dallas. I live in Dallas. I live here. I mean, I've been on Comedy Central and Showtime, and I used to be Joan Rivers' opening act before she passed. I did the last
No
4
kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. Those are tricky shows, like to be, because she probably was working big theaters.
Yeah, I mean, she was doing like casino, you know, the theaters and casinos and stuff. You know, she did like Biloxi and stuff. Her last run I did with her, and then she, you know, got selfish and died on me. You know,
Man,
so
what is that all about? She let a lot of people down when she did that.
yeah. So and then I toured with Gabriel Iglesias and in the Middle East. Like he has a special called I think it's called Aloha Fluffy or something. But he's talking about his experience in India. That was me and him in India. We went to India.
Cool.
Yeah.
We did the Middle East. We did Saudi. We were the first actual public, from what I heard, a public comedy show in Saudi. They had comics come over from America, but they were kind of underground shows. They couldn't really advertise them. And it's because one of the princes from Saudi specifically wanted Gabriel to come in. And so
Wow.
we sat there in this big arena with men on one side, women on the other, and it was wild. Then we did Dubai, and then we did Qatar. So
So the whole audience was split men and women. That's really funny.
yeah.
Did that affect your set at all?
You know, like so they you know, it's one of those things where you know they tell you I knew I was going to be clean anyway, but they tell you not to cuss, and then it makes you kind of want to cuss, you know?
Of course.
One
But
of
the,
those
the
things.
comedian inside you was like, fuck that. Are you kidding
Yeah.
me? Let's
Yeah.
do this.
So it's like they have like I don't want to mess it up, but they have like religious police. They're not really police, but they're like elders in the community kind of thing.
Okay.
So if you like say a cuss word or whatever, like they're gonna fine you like 5,000 American dollars or whatever.
Really?
That's what they say, but you know, again, I didn't do anything. I was behaving as much as I could. I was just more concerned about not pissing them off.
I would think like you may get a bullet to the head from pissing off the Saudi prince.
So here's the weird thing is like, and I didn't know this until I was there, is in the Middle East, like where I'm from, where my parents are from in India, we're like the manual labor over there. So like
Oh,
there's no jobs for them in that part of India. So the Middle East like brings them over to like, I mean, it's a known, like when Qatar was building all those stadiums for the World Cup, like a lot of construction workers that died were from my parents' region in India.
oh, no kidding.
It's almost slave labor in a sense, not really, but kind of, And so a lot of the people just thought because I was from there that I wasn't even a comic. Like I had to explain a couple of times that with Gabriel, and he
You are
didn't know.
his manservant? No, no, I'm actually a comedian.
Yeah, we were in, I want to say it might have been Saudi. It was Saudi or Dubai. I'm sitting outside with him. There's no real green room. We're sitting like right outside the venue, like the back end of the stage. And this Indian guy runs up. He starts yelling at me, and he's yelling at me in the language that I speak. He's telling me, "Hey man, you can't be sitting around. The boss is gonna fire you. He's gonna get so mad." And I was trying to explain. I don't like I understand the language. I don't speak enough of it back. And I was like, "Hey man, I'm performing." And his boss comes around the corner and he starts yelling at his employee because he's like, "Why are you yelling at the talent?" That kind of stuff. And it was one of those, where he bows his head and does this as he goes back because he's so sad and so
Oh,
apologetic and stuff,
like,
but
like Homer Simpson back into the
yeah,
bushes.
into the bushes exactly. So it's a very weird dynamic there. I mean, it's also like because I'm not really, I mean, I am American, but like their idea of American is white, black, Hispanic.
Oh,
Like I'm not like the stuff is kind of funny to them. They're not really laughing the way I thought it was going to be like me coming in. Same thing in India. I thought I was going to come there. I was going to be saluted. They're like, "Oh my gosh, we finally have you're here."
one of us, one of
Yeah.
us.
And it's
And it
more
didn't
like
go, it didn't go the way you wanted it to?
it didn't feel the energy didn't feel the way I expected it to be. I mean, like I rarely get to perform in front of my own kind anyway, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. Like, because I'm a kid of immigrants, right? So they think I'm Americanized and kind of whitewashed, and you know, so it I didn't get booed, but I didn't. It wasn't.
I know what you mean. There's certain sets where you don't get the love that you expect, and then
Yeah,
it's a disappointment, even though to the like say the common eye who's watching from the outside, they might go, "Well, that was a pretty good set. That was a good
yeah,
set."
yeah, exactly.
You're like, "You have no idea what I can do."
It was like like when I would do like an Indian accent when we were in India, I would do an Indian accent. And the Indian accent's not to get a laugh. It's just I'm just explaining how my dad and my parents are. So,
Right. Yeah, I saw some of your material.
yeah. But then Gabriel would go up there and do an Indian accent, and they lost their marbles, man. They went crazy. Like they couldn't believe this Mexican guy could. And he's not even.
That is my bit. That is my bit.
And to be fair, his Indian accent is awful. It's so bad.
Oh, funny.
It's like what you would say to me to make fun of me and make me kick your ass at a bar. It's that kind of.
Right. Oh,
Mine's
funny.
actually really authentic, and I think that's the problem. Maybe it was like a little too authentic. It was like,
Right.
which one's the accent? Is it? I guess his accent is his how I talk now, obviously. So
Well, you don't speak with an accent now, so it must be weird to have them hear your voice coming
yeah,
out of your body,
exactly.
in India,
Yeah,
expecting
exactly.
what they expect. Yeah, that's interesting that he got the laugh, and after you did the thing and didn't get the laugh, you're like, you mother,
Yeah,
really?
exactly. It's not people. I know.
I wrote that. And so you were born in Dallas, right? That you are a Dallas kid, and when did you come upon the Dallas comedy scene? Like, how did that go about?
So I graduated college. I was a big fan of George Lopez back then, like the
What
two
was your major in college?
film,
Nice.
but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, to be honest with you, I wasn't good at anything. Still not really good at anything. I mean, this is the thing I'm most good at, which is why I do it.
Sure.
But I was never a naturally smart guy. I kind of hit my ceiling, like knowledge wise in high school. Like senior year, I was pretty much it. I
You
couldn't figure.
peaked.
And I realized, I mean, in hindsight, it was good for my stand up because I'm just skeptical of everything. Everything just seemed ridiculous my senior year. You know what I mean? Like all the stuff you're
Right.
teaching me, I was like, I know I don't need any of this. I know I don't.
That's
And
funny. You outgrew school.
yeah, and I mean back then you don't know that. You just think you're dumb, but I was just
Yeah.
skeptical. I didn't
Yeah.
understand why I needed to learn calculus. I wasn't going to do it. And so, yeah, I ended up taking a workshop in 2001. I went to go see George Lopez in February of or January. Hey, no barking. January of 2001. And I took a workshop and then I did my first show in June 6th of 2001. Actually, it was kind of funny because we did a Wednesday show. This is back when they had Wednesday through Sunday shows. and we were the opening act because normally we were the opening act because the headliner couldn't pull in a Wednesday night crowd. It's hard to pull in Wednesday night crowds,
Yeah.
and the headliner was Hedberg.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Funny.
that's
He
so
couldn't pull in a Wednesday, huh?
so we had like a 6-person showcase, and then Hedberg closes it out. I didn't know who Hedberg was at the time. This is June
Isn't that
01.
something the first time you watch him, you're just like, what
I'm
is
like, how many
this?
classes did he take? Whoa.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Good Lord. He
so
seems to have gotten this down.
yeah. I mean, this is back when Comedy Central was like, I remember the presents. It was like just the red background with the black curtain. It was like
Right.
Wanda Sykes was the first one, I think. Wanda Sykes, Greg Giraldo. It was that season. David Tell. Um,
Wow.
Hedberg was on there, obviously. Tom Rhodes. I mean, it was like the cream of the crop.
All-star. Yeah.
He's still the cream of the crop, you know. It slowly got watered down over the years, you know.
Yeah.
So
Wow. And tell us about your like rise into the Dallas scene. Like what clubs were happening when you first started getting into Dallas?
well, I mean, well, Addison is still there.
Sure.
The
You
GM
worked there quite a bit, the Improv in Addison?
Yeah, the GM, they always tell you like your home club is the last one to headline you, you know. They were actually the first ones. They were the first ones, and they were really quick out the gate because there wasn't a big scene here. There was maybe 40, 50 people here, I
Right.
think. I mean, I was doing all the open mics, and the guys that I was doing open mics with were not the comics who were working in the clubs, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
There was like maybe 5 or 6 that were working the clubs, and then everybody else was kind of grinding in the open mics. And that's how I got good quick, because obviously, you know, mics are my whole thing here was like, if I want to do more time, let me just be the last guy to close the mic out. Nobody wants to be the last guy at the open mic.
Right.
And they would let me do as much time as I wanted. So I'd do like 20, 30. I only had 4, but I would just I'd go through my notebook like one line by line and just
Yeah. Well,
and
that's how
it,
you do it. You just
yeah.
water those plants and watch them grow. Wow, that's cool. And what like the whole thing where you and I met at the Dallas Comedy Club, which used to be the Dallas Comedy House.
Yeah.
I wasn't around. I just got into the scene in Dallas in August
Mhm.
because I took some time off, a decade or so. But but we met and you
Season.
were yeah, one season, one generation. But you and I met doing comedy at the Dallas Comedy Club. What was that like to be part of the Comedy House and then have that closed down and then turn it into the Comedy
I
Club?
mean, there's so many clubs in this area. I mean, I'm sure you found out there's like
Yeah.
8 or 9. The Comedy House was always Dallas Comedy House was always an improv place first for stand up.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of the people who did stand up there were also improv students as well. And I had studied improv like my first few years into stand up. I studied improv,
Yeah.
and I loved it.
It's
But
helpful. Yeah.
yeah, but the stand up part of that club wasn't as dominant as the
Okay.
improv side was, and it switched over this way. You know, the way it is now, it's more stand up forward, which
Yeah.
is which is what people come to see. I mean, it's no knock on improv, but it's, you know,
Yeah.
unless there's a celebrity in the troupe, most people aren't going to come watch improv, you know?
Yeah.
So
It's a tough sell, and it's
yeah,
they do a good job of getting people to show up with a variety of shows and such,
yeah.
but it's a tough sell, and the stand up is definitely in the main room.
You know what I've loved about this scene, it's why I'm so biased to it, is there's so many different kinds of rooms here. Like
Yeah.
you can cut your teeth in the black room, or if you want to go do a Tejano bar, you can do that. Or you want like the redneck room, you got this. You want the stuffy rich people, you can get this. You want suburbs, you want drunks, you want college
Jesus
kids.
Christ, I don't want any of those.
Exactly. I mean, that's why you have that turnout behind you. Look at that.
Right? Look at that.
That's the
There's nobody in
demographic.
there. I got nobody to entertain. I'm a snob.
But you can work on everything if you're willing to drive. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
point. Like
Yeah,
most
that's
people,
the key with here. It's all
yeah,
about like 45 minutes away from it
yeah.
itself.
And that's the work. I mean, that's the work involved
Yeah.
with all of it. Like, and you just keep doing it. Like I don't want to turn into like my generation kind of thing. It's just like none of us when we started even thought about being famous because it wasn't really a viable thing even back then.
Yeah.
I mean, Greg Giraldo. I mean, Giraldo's my favorite comic of all time, and so I
Yeah.
knew if I was going to get there, I had to be at least as good as him. And I never, it gave me something to strive for. And now you kind of see people who are famous, and you're like, that guy's not even close to Giraldo.
Right.
Kind of like takes the shine away, you know?
A
So
little bit. Yeah. Yeah. And that's comedy is so subjective. It's really
yeah,
tough because it's other people's cup of tea is garbage to me.
You know, it's what was also weird too is like again when I was doing it, I had no idea I was like the only Indian dude doing it. I have no idea. I'm just doing. I jumped into it because I had never heard my experience on stage. Like as cliche as that sounds, I had never heard it. Anytime anybody talked about Indian people, they were always mocking us or doing stereotype jokes.
Right. Yeah, the 7-Eleven typical like low
Always.
hanging fruit.
That's always what it was.
Yeah.
And to this city's credit, once I started getting good, everybody in the scene quit doing those jokes because they thought
Wow.
it was
Ah,
respectful to me. That's how sweet the city was. They didn't have to do that.
no.
You know, I started in June of '01.
They start getting embarrassed because you showed up. And they're
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I mean, they felt stupid, you know.
oh my
You know,
God.
9/11 hit in, 3 months later after I started, right? And so I got a lot of shit about that. That's how I would get introduced, them trying to be, comics trying to be funny about it, you know. But
What did Indian have to do with
they don't
9/11?
know. People don't know. They don't
Good
care.
question.
Brown.
Oh, okay. Brown is brown.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I learned that. I didn't know that. I thought people could tell the difference. They obviously couldn't.
Oh, that's
But then
fair.
after a couple of months, like the better I got, the more people just, at least this city, I'm saying this city, I'm not saying all
Yeah.
this. This city has always been so good and respectful of all that, like always making sure that you like if the comic messed up my name, the comics in the back were shouting out how to say it right. I mean, it was always very
Yes.
protective, like, hey, he's good. Quit shitting on him like he's, a stereotype or a
Well,
hack.
in their defense, your last name is kind of difficult to like. It's
It is, it is.
Garghese. A G and an H in the middle of a name is like challenge for anyone. Is that Gaha?
Well, it's also weird because like when I started, again, I didn't think anything of it. The scene was so nice to me, but like, to be blunt, like last comic was always like because I had done it a few seasons and not like gotten super far, but like every year they changed their parameters of what they wanted to hear from me. Like one year, okay, we want your ethnic stuff. I'm like, well, it's just my stuff. It's not ethnic stuff. And then I
Like in
would do
China,
it.
it's all Chinese food.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next year they'd be like, "Well, we don't want any ethnic jokes." I'm like, like, what do you mean ethnic jokes? This is just I'm talking about my dad. This has nothing to do with
Right.
anything. And then they would do something. There would be
Make your dad Italian.
yeah, basically yeah. Well, because the ethnic jokes back then in the early 2000s, they were a lot of them were really hacky. It was,
Yeah.
I'm half Indian, I'm half this, I'm this. It was all just hacky
Right.
shit. There was no real like genuine thing about my parents moved here, they did this. It was all just kind of laughing. It was that kind of I mean, it was racist shit back then. It was.
Yeah.
But then you would have them tell me, well, talk about yourself. Like, what's your real life? Like your story. And then I would bring that up. They're like, no, 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 not the Indian stuff. Like, what's your story? I'm like,
That is my story,
what is my
motherfucker.
I don't know what I don't have. I'm not sick. I don't have any addiction problem. What's my I don't know what my
Right.
story is. So then I started just doing self-deprecating. I was like, is that personal enough? I don't know. And then they're like,
Right.
well, what about your Indian stuff? It's like they don't even know. So I
Oh
just
my God.
I
That's so
bubbled-
frustrating.
It is. It's you don't know what to do because you assume back then this is before social media, right? And before Google, you assume LA knows everything, right? They're the ones
Of
that
course.
they signed the
They're
checks.
star makers.
Yeah, exactly. So you feel like, what am I doing wrong? I mean, I was in meetings way before I should have been in meetings. Let me put you that. Like they pushed me up really quick. But I
You have
mean,
management and agent and all that.
no, I got after around the time of last comic, I got Montreal around the same time. And I had to wait a year to do it. I got a bunch of stuff at the same time, Comedy Central, all this stuff at the same time.
Okay.
And so I was in these meetings, I literally would get like, you get all these cards after you perform, and I'd be like, hey, they're like, when are you going to be in LA? I'm like, I'll be there next week. And I'd book my ticket that next day. I was there, and I would sit there. I got nobody championing me, just me by myself. This is how much I didn't know about meetings. I dressed up for these meetings.
Right.
I'm in a
Whoops.
job interview. I don't know. Nobody told me this.
Hello,
So
sir. I'm pleased to meet you.
I literally had like this little manila envelope with my headshot in it. Like I didn't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so helpful to have someone break it down for you before you even get there.
That's why the manager agent helps, right?
Yeah.
But again, also, in hindsight, they don't know what to do with an Indian dude. I mean, there's a reason there hasn't been a sitcom, maybe a couple in 20 years,
Yeah.
too. And I'm being pitched at 2003. I sound like this. Their experience with Indian people was accents and
Yeah.
tech support and stuff. They had no idea that there was a whole generation of kids,
Tech support.
a bunch of kids
yeah.
born and raised here, who just
Right.
fit in. I mean, if anything, I always thought me living in Texas was kind of like I'm performing in front of your focus groups. Like, like you're worried about what middle America laughs at. I'm doing it
there.
every night. Like,
I'm in middle America. I'm in the belly of the beast.
yeah, it's not like we're trying to figure out what they laugh at. And so just hearing all these kinds of things that if they said to me now or said to anybody now, it would get them canceled the way they talk to me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one story and then we'll move on. But like, have you know that show Phineas and Ferb?
Sure.
It's okay. So Disney was recruiting me to write for some of their shows, and they gave a bunch of comics. There's probably 30 of us there, a tour around the Disney lot, and we're punching up scripts and stuff. And then we sit in on a storyboard read of Phineas and Ferb. Okay, and so it's the two creators, and they basically go cell by cell and do like the voices of all the characters, right? Two white guys, and there's an Indian character in there,
Oh,
and
boy.
they do this. Yeah, exactly what you thought was going to happen. This is '07 or '08, I think. I think it's '08. And we're all just kind of, and the comics who were sitting there, it's like, there's like black comics, Asian comics. I'm the only Indian guy there again, but we're just kind of sitting there, and they start doing the accent like really shit, like, and everybody's laughing at the accent. You can tell they're laughing at the accent.
Right.
Whole room of Disney writers, and I remember sitting. None of the comics were laughing. The comics were just kind of sitting there, and these are like bigger name comics. This is like Steve Byrne, Michael Costa, like guys who are big now. I mean, this is '07, right?
Right.
Kind of sitting there, and they're all laughing. All these execs are laughing, and I remember thinking in my head, like, oh, I don't belong here. Like, I don't. I just, if I move here, I'm going to be fighting this battle forever,
Yeah.
and that I'm just a normal person. And it really cemented in the back of my head. I'm just not, either I need to have representation that really gets me, or I just need to like focus on what I can do to make myself happy, kind of stuff.
You need that rep because
Yeah.
if somebody doesn't go to bat for you, it's
Yep.
really hard, especially if you're in any kind of minority status.
On the flip side, like all the diversity stuff that's going on, I feel like they went way too far. They're just putting
course.
it, and it should be a little bit more of a gatekeeper kind of mentality. And I'm not saying about including me. I'm just saying they shouldn't just be throwing everybody all these things just to like make up for it, because then it gives a sense of entitlement on that end too.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, they don't look. Their job is to make money. Their job is not to like take risks. That's our job. Their job is
Yeah.
just continue. They want to keep their jobs, just keep continuing what we know works. For me to tell them that, you know, a bunch of people in Texas think I'm funny, like they don't understand that unless they
No.
come to the show and see it. So
In LA, I learned very quickly that they are your best friend if you have anything to pitch. If you have anything that can make them money, they will love you, they'll court you, they'll wine and dine you. And the second that proves to be not a money machine for them,
yeah,
they give you the LA ghost. It's
yeah,
just like, oh, he's in a meeting. He's in a meeting. He's in a meeting. Ah, God damn it. Did I get blown off? Okay. Okay.
If you meet somebody through online dating and they look nothing like their picture, can you call tech support? This guy's in India. Try to act like they're American. Use fake American names, American slang, trying to relate to us. What pisses me off now they pretend they're so American, they pretend they can't pronounce my last name. Yeah, which is bullshit. It's probably their last name. You know what I mean? They're like, Mr. Varghese? I'm like, roll the R, last E silent. Look at your name badge, bro. It's right there, bro. You realize now they can pop up the city you're calling from and the local baseball team. They can make small talk that way. So if you were in Detroit, the guy in India would be like, hey, how about those Tigers? How about your Tigers? You have real tigers. Ours are just Puerto Ricans.
But that's what I love about stand-up. It's like the ultimate equalizer, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially in Dallas. We were talking about this when we met. Dallas is such a transient city, man. Most people move here for work, so it's way more diverse than people think it is.
It really is.
Yeah, and people don't get it until you come here. Dallas and Houston are super diverse. Houston more so than Dallas. And so the audiences reflect that, like they're pretty smart for the most part, So
That's what I love about the Dallas Comedy Club is you can't go there and start punching down at all. The audience
exactly.
will turn on you because they're like, nah, we've seen good comedy. We don't like
it definitely
that.
it skews younger, which is great
Yeah.
because of that neighborhood. And you need to be around young folks. I don't want to perform in front of people my own age too. You need like different perspectives. You have to, just to figure it out. So
Tell us something that reminds us of when we were young. No, no,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about now. Let's find out about you a little bit. What's yours? Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have an older sister. She's a priest in Atlanta,
Really?
an Episcopalian priest in Atlanta.
No
She
kidding.
runs a St. Luke's Cathedral. So she
How
is
about
the head honcho there. She was in New York for about 20 years. She worked at Columbia. She was a chaplain at Columbia, and then she worked at St. Mark's in the Bowery, which is where Hamilton's buried. That's
No
their
kidding. Yeah.
name. And then she moved to Atlanta a few years ago, and so she runs that church.
So you're the baby brother?
She's about. I have no brother, just her, just her.
No, I said you were the baby brother.
Yeah, I'm the baby brother. Yeah, and so she's
No wonder you're a comedian.
I don't know, dude. We're complete opposites, personality wise, achievement wise, everything,
Mom
dude.
and Dad, look at me, look at me.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, she's like about to be. She speaking of like checking boxes. She's probably going to be a bishop in a few years, and she'll be the first Indian bishop in the U.S. and all that kind of
Jeez.
crazy
Oh,
stuff.
cool.
It's wild, man. None of us thought that. I mean, we didn't jump into these things to be the first of anything. We just there was a we wanted to do it. So
Well, does that make you feel? Is there like a sense of responsibility as to be of Indian descent, like where you represent something bigger than just yourself?
I take it upon myself. I don't think a lot of other. I was always disappointed when I found out other Indian comics didn't see that as a kind of responsibility. Like
Huh.
I always like if I see an Indian comic doing jokes about Indians that somebody who wasn't Indian could write about Indians, it's very disappointing to me.
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
a lot.
True.
I see a lot of that. I mean, even now, we talked about the Dallas scene. There's so many new Indian comics out there, right?
Yeah.
And I'm waiting. I'm always, I mean, I love watching stand up. I love watching it, and I want to cheer on my guys and be like, "Hey, this is really smart stuff." But when they start doing jokes about how the accent sucks and our food makes me sick, it's like, dude, anybody else could have written that shit, dude.
Right.
What are you bringing that's so what are you doing to uplift? If somebody told them that to their face, they would be offended. So why would you present it on stage?
Yeah. And we want to know the inside scoop. Like
Yeah,
us people who aren't Indian want to know what it's like to live the life of an Indian and
exactly. And to
especially
hear
one in America.
comics say like, well, you can't do this because they don't know this. I'm like, dude, I've been doing this since '01. There is a way to do it. It takes more work.
Yeah.
You can do it. I mean, you just I think a lot of comics just want to be famous. I think most want to be famous. And I think most just don't want to work. It's just kind of hey, this is a job that I can, maybe I can skate by. I mean, it's like any profession, right? 90% of them are just kind of skating by. 5% are really good, and 5% are just, or suck.
Right. Shouldn't be there.
So, but
How would you describe your comedy lens, Paul?
Oh, that's
It
funny.
sounds
That's
like
exactly what I was going to ask
yeah.
you.
I'm like, well, it's definitely I mean, it's like to me, it's like when you do filters on Instagram, you have like all those different things you can swipe through. Like the main one I always go through is what I was saying about the racial thing. If I am going to talk about something about my race, it has to be something that, oh, only I could have written, or only an Indian person should have been able to write, right? But in general, most of it tends to be skeptical. Like I've really tried to refrain from being cynical on stage and cranky because most of my comedy peers that I started with are hit that wall where they're just kind of burned out.
It's
And I
not a
found
character, it's a flaw.
yeah, exactly. And so I just find I don't find rage comedy that funny. I find skeptical.
Yeah.
You can still be angry or cynical, but be skeptical. It just seems to be it's more of a yes and approach like improv.
Sure.
I don't understand it, yes and this, as opposed to no but, which is what stand up is. But like
Right.
I think it opens more avenues for me if I'm skeptical. Like everything I say is just because I don't not when I mean I don't understand it, I don't mean like I'm dumb and like this is weird and
Right.
just like I don't understand why this is a thing,
Right.
which is
Right.
more fun for me it opens more avenues for me.
The skeptical Indian. That's a fun
That's
comedy
what
lens.
Texas.
Yeah.
How did
But you
how did
could
that
apply that.
evolve? Like from your first day on stage doing it, your first open mic to where you were in your first couple of years, did your persona and the way you present yourself and your comedy lens evolve? Or how'd you find it?
So my best friend when I was started doing stand up, he was as big a comedy nerd as I was. And so we both were, that's where it helped because if I wrote anything that he thought was just kind of shitty, he would always point it out to me. It wasn't a pat on your back. Hey, we're all doing this together. It was like, hey man, that sucks. Don't do it. And so I just kind of evolved from there. I would watch, I mean, I was working at the Improv so much. I was seeing so many headliners roll through town, New York and LA guys, and a lot of them just sounded the same, dude. Everybody was using the same openers. I mean, the same opening jokes. And it was just like the anger part is just not me. Like, it doesn't mean I haven't gotten angry at times, but it's just, I'm in general in life, I don't understand why people act the way they do. And so like for me, like I love Bill Burr. I can't only watch like maybe 20 minutes of Burr before it just kind of like ruins my day. It's just like, why is he so he's like he's a millionaire.
He's right. Life does suck.
He's a millionaire. You're
Yeah.
bitching about stuff. You're standing in line, you're bitching about stuff like that. Like on paper, I should be the one screaming, but like, I just never, and also like a lot of it is just kind of like I'm not going to go there spiritual stuff. It's just how my family is. I mean, we're all very like we're trying to welcome people. Everybody's in this. This is not an essential job for me. I love doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my job, but it's not. I also realize how disposable I am in the big picture of things,
Funny. Yeah, it's like when a bluesman gets rich, you no longer buy his blues.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like your comedy buddy you wrote with in your first couple years didn't let you do the hack stuff. Like you kind of fast forwarded.
Yeah.
It sounded like you had a pretty successful first year. And I'm curious how you would spell that playbook out for others.
Well, to me, the big thing is realizing whether you're killing or not. I think most comics think their idea of killing is not, it's not really killing. I think they're getting reactions on the jokes. I think that to me, the biggest shit that I noticed with stand up, especially once social media kicked in, is because social media is all about just reactions. That's like the currency there. You don't really have to get a laugh. You just have to get like
Whoa.
you can just, pressing your thumb on something is not laughing. It's just you can do that. And I think comics equate that to laughs. And that's what they're doing sets for clips now, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, when I started, I mean, like I said, going back to Geraldo and Hedberg, they were so good. Like when they would rip the room down. And I was like, okay, well, that's the standard. It wasn't like I can never get there. It's achievable if you're willing to work, I think a lot of comics think, oh, I got laughs where I wanted to get laughs, so I had a great set. But like, no, you had a good set. You didn't kill, because I've never had an agent. So like anything I got was because they were like, what the hell was that, dude? Like I had to almost be undeniable,
Right.
I got stuff. Nobody was vouching for me in any of these things. So I think comics they lose sight of it because they're getting likes on Instagram. They lose sight of it because everybody wants to be everybody's friend in case somebody pops and gets big. It's like there's no like real like, hey man, that sucks. You don't need to be doing that, dude. You're above that. That's my buddy used to always, and he ingrained it in me for years. He doesn't do stand-up anymore. I mean, he's a writer now in LA, but I always have his voice in the back of my head, stuff like that. Everything I do. So
every time you get something questionable, you hear him go, boo.
Exactly.
Sucks. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. I'm gonna do it.
You also got to be around comics that don't think like you. I think that's another big thing. It's like I think all comics think they all have to hang around the edgy guys, and the clean guys have to hang around the clean guys, and the women have to hang around the women. And no, dude. If you can have a diverse, eclectic group of friends, it's such a who are honest with you, it's such a good exchange of ideas. Like you can still be clean and have like some gumption. You don't have to be corny, and you can also be edgy and not be reaction based, like it's a good mix. My buddy was, if I had to classify his writing, I used to give him a lot of shit. He sounded a lot like Dave Attell. Like his delivery was very Attell.
Right, yeah.
But his brain was very Attell-like, which was great because he would add this edge to shit that I didn't have, So
my girlfriend's also an athlete. She was an athlete. I am not athletic at all. Here's how athletic she was. She got a 4 full-year swimming scholarship to Rice University. Okay? No, I have to say that sentence exactly that way. Because when my parents asked me what she did in college, and they go, she swam for Rice. So did we! We were so hungry. There was no Grubhub.
Well, do you get a lot of hecklers being who you are? You seem like an upbeat guy, so like typically only angry comics tend to get hecklers.
I mean, I early on I was super shy. I mean, I didn't come out of my shell till like 08, 09.
Oh, okay.
I was really shy. And
on stage?
Yeah. I mean, I would just do my set and that was it. If something happened, okay, but I just glossed over it. And so if I was bombing, people would heckle every now and then. I mean, I did so many bar shows. I mean, bar shows were
you're gonna get that in the bar show.
Gonna get them, yeah. And then you're doing shows in East Texas. People are gonna say stuff, but it's not nobody's chasing me out of the venue. It wasn't anything bad like that. Any heckling I get now is just because I mean, I most likely deserve it 90% of the time.
What do you do when you get the heckling? How do you handle it?
Well, depending, like, so if I'm a little tipsy, I'm gonna be like, hey, shut the fuck up. But if I'm in a good space, I always go to improv, which is yes and. It's the easiest way to do it. It's the easy way to pull people in. People always think it sounds scripted, but it's not. But
yeah,
good improv is like, it's beautiful to watch. But like, you can say whatever you want. I mean, you have the microphone. You can say whatever they said. You can change into whatever you wanted them to say. That's what people never understand about.
Exactly. It's a superpower.
When people are amazed by crowd work, they're like, oh, it's so amazing. And like, You don't know what that dude said. That the
Yeah.
dude with the microphone just made up what that guy
I
said.
repeated sort of what he said, but in the way I envisioned it to help me with my next bit.
Yeah, exactly. But also, like in most cases, especially comedy clubs, if you're good, they'll never heckle, dude. Like when
Exactly.
they heckle because you took a 10-second pause between the joke.
Yeah.
Like, or I mean, I've worked with comics who like they'll wait long enough for somebody to like clear their throat. Anything like, and then they'll like, oh, sir, what was that? Like, that's not, you're not getting heckled, dude. You're
No.
just
It's
doing your
better to
job.
let those pass until it's a real definite interruption.
Exactly. And also, if they want to heckle you, they'll and you didn't hear it the first time, they will make a point to make sure that you hear them. So, you
Yeah.
know, I've been called every racial slur in the book, and
From the
90
crowd?
from half from the crowd, half off stage afterwards,
You're
and
pretty
then
funny for a
oh,
insert insulting
yeah,
word here.
yeah. I mean, every single one except my own. It's kind of cool, I guess. I don't know. Is that
So people
impressive?
misconstrue your race.
Yeah, all the time, all the time. Well, because I sound like this too. This doesn't help. So.
Yeah, you sound what's the word? Intelligent. You sound like you're
Somebody told me I
educated.
sound like Seymour Skinner. Never mind.
You kind
I
of do.
didn't
Well,
like
Simpsons.
Bart,
it.
that's great. Do you do voiceover stuff? Have you ever tried to do voiceover stuff?
Yeah, I've been asked to do like some video game stuff, but I never really got into it, man. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a from what I understand, it's a dog eat dog industry, but
yeah,
it's run by like six or seven of the top ones, and then everyone
yeah.
else is taking the scraps.
There's a big anime studio in Arlington or Irving. I think it's called Funimation, whatever. I think it's called Funimation. They do anime dubs over in English, and so like Dragon Ball Z, all that stuff. And you're right, it's like the same eight dudes, who do that, and then they go to the Comic Cons, and it's just, I mean, my thing that I'm really good at is stand up, and so I just really try to buckle in on that. I mean, that's what's going to pay my bills. So
It sounds like you're also a really good writer. I'd like to pick your brain on how the like when you punch up a set or you're paid to punch someone's set up. How does that work? Do they pay per joke? Do they pay per hour? Do you write in a writing room or you write by yourself? What was your
what
experience?
a couple of times I've done it. I've done a couple for friends, and I'll just throw it to them. I mean, they're friends, whatever. I did write some stuff for like pretty well-known comic that like, and he just paid me like a flat rate at the beginning. My issue with writing for people is like my brain thinks so different from theirs. It's hard for me to like know with like
Yeah.
a lot of the comics now, especially a lot of them like wordplay and like puns, and I'm like so anti-pun, so it's hard for me to like to think that way. I just throw them ideas of what I think is funny. And a lot like I've written so much over the years that I haven't used. A lot of times, like with this last comic who paid me some money, a flat rate, I just threw him old premises that I had never recorded or never worked. And he thought they were great. I was like, well, sure, have them, dude. I mean, like I have so much. I mean, I'm not going to be running dry on ideas.
Yeah.
But it's really hard for me to punch. I mean, without it looking the way or sounding the way that I sound, if that makes any sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know how I sound. I'm saying just like, if somebody pitches me a premise that I've already heard before, it's like I have to remind myself that like, oh, I can't fix the premise. Like they want to do that premise. So I've got to just kind of think the way they do kind of stuff. But
Right.
again, improv helps so much. Anytime I'm
Yeah.
stuck, it's yes, and it opens up so much.
Heighten.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's how I write. So
That's cool. Man, well, what like speaking of how you write, could you walk us through how you come up with a joke? Like just sort of like are you a person who gets the gem of the idea first and then reverse engineers it into the structure, or do you work structure first, or do you not have any of that at all?
I mean, I've done them all so many different ways, dude. So like sometimes I used to have this like 4-minute bit about people fleeing countries because the word fleeing was so funny to me. Like just the action of fleeing was so funny. And I can't even explain it to like anybody. I mean, so I wrote an entire 4-minute bit about how Americans don't flee, right? And it was like and and I loved it, but I wrote that was backwards. But a lot of times it's just if I make somebody laugh at something in conversation, so every day I write. If I make somebody laugh in conversation, I'll write that line down. If something confuses me, I always write that line down. No matter what it is. I don't flesh out a joke. I just write down that idea. If something pisses me off, I write it down. It's all in my phone. I used to have notebooks all the time, phone. And then in a day or so, I'll look back at it and maybe something will stick out, but it's just to empty my brain.
Yeah.
But eventually, this, you put it down, you look at it, one just pops out of the page. It just I can't explain it. You can just kind of see it. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's the one I can mess with. And who knows? There's other ones you could probably mess with too. I don't know. My friends might think it's funny or whatever, but I empty my brain out as often as I can. So
That's smart. Yeah, and I like you're modern enough to know that the phone is a good source of notebook.
I mean, I have a box of notebooks that's gone with me from like every place I've moved since '01. It's just a box full of
It's
notebooks.
just dusty notebooks with old ideas.
Yeah, but the phone is now the baby. I mean, I basically like I keep tabs. If I write 1,000 premises, I start a new page. I'm on my 7,000th one right now, which is, but
Jeez.
again, I'm not none of those might not amount to anything, but I have to empty my brain out. I don't want that thing as like, Mike, what were we talking about last week? I can't, what was
Right.
it? I don't want to be that guy. So
Yeah. So you got it all recorded down there. And then you take that and when you try it out on stage, do you have it down like Jerry Seinfeld where you have every word crafted, or are you
I try
trying
to.
ideas?
I try to
Yeah.
because it's hard for me to rant about stuff without wanting a laugh every 3 sentences kind of thing. Most of the stuff that I think is really good, it never works. That I think is awesome, it never works. And it's the
So
stuff that
true.
yeah, it's always the stuff that I throw away that I mean, this doesn't mean anything. That there's always a nugget there. But
Yeah,
again,
you
I
hear
don't.
that crowd just go, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the weird thing is like, doing longer sets, they kind of have to make sense, right? So you can't really just throw a random thing about a vacuum cleaner in a 20-minute set. It kind of has to fit in kind of a chunk.
Yeah.
Crowds are so good now, though. You can actually tell them in the middle of a set, hey, I'm gonna try this new thing. Tell me what you think. They'll actually go with you now. They're
Oh,
really
I
more
like that.
than they used to be. If you're just honest with them. So
I like that. Yeah, I like that there's a bit of breaking down that fourth wall in that.
yeah, it's obviously helps to have comedian friends that can help you write stuff, but like the older you get, man, the more they kind of just drift off. They don't have the same desire that you had. Like maybe I'm nostalgic, but I still get the same rush writing a new joke as I did when I first started.
I just
And
did some jokes last night at the open mic and they worked and I was just like
yeah, I know.
yeah,
And
it just it's
it never
thrilling.
gets old for me. It's a fun toy to play with.
Yeah.
And I don't have a whole lot of friends that get that joy anymore. So it's a little bit more harder to pick and choose stuff. So
Once you have your list of that seems very operationalized. We can operationalize that for young comics. Just write anything that got a laugh throughout the day, write a notebook, and then let it kind of sit, let
I'm
percolate.
talking, yeah, yeah, even in conversation like at a Walmart, anything that you said, but also anything that pissed you off during the day, and not like rage, like I was screaming at somebody. I'm like talking like stuff in traffic or stuff in line or something you read. I mean, it's just getting in the habit of always writing stuff down and not sitting there 2 days later going like, so I was thinking about this, just write it all down so it's out of your system. And that's just, I mean, I'm not writing for 1 hour a day going like, I'm going to be funny from 1:30 to 2:30. Because then what happens if something hilarious happens at 2:31? Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's always coming. It's like if you watch any biopics on musicians, right? Like all their biggest hits were like kind of matter of fact, just it was the last take of the day. It's never like, hey, I sat down and wrote this pop song this way. It's always an accidental take. It's always, and I've looked at stand up the same way. It's when I least expect it. What I hate is when I come up with an idea that I could have easily come up with 10 years ago. I'm like, where the hell was this 10 years ago? Like, how come I'm just thinking about my mom's vacuum cleaner now when I could have thought about it in '01? But that's what's cool. That's what's fun about it for me. So
Yeah, it's an endless supply.
yeah. If you keep your mind open to it.
Yeah.
So
Well, what people newer comedians always tend to forget is that when you have an idea and it's a fun gem of an idea, if you don't write it down, you think you're going to remember it later, but you run out of the context. There's no context into that
yeah.
idea, so you forget even what the idea was about. You're like, what was I even talking about that was so funny? You don't remember that it was about your mother's vacuum cleaner, right?
You know what's also what I miss about having a lot of comedy buddies is like we were all really good at trying each other's whatever we suggested for each other, we just tried it out regardless of whether we believed in it or not. We're like, hey man,
Yeah.
just try this line out. We didn't sit there and go, oh, that's not my style. That's not what I'm doing. We were like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And 90% of the time it works because it's coming from such a different perspective
Yeah.
than what you're thinking. I've met so many comics recently that you tell them that like, yeah, but that's not what I'm going for. I'm like, you don't know what you're going for. If you didn't know, if you already knew what you're going for, the joke would be done. It's like
Right.
even every book has an editor. There's
Mm.
not one guy making a movie. It's like it's not one guy making an album. So why would stand-up be any different? And you can tell comics who write by themselves because all the jokes sound exactly the same.
Mm.
It's delivery, same this, same that, and that's just boring to me. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we're always looking for giving advice for writing and creating jokes. And so the question is, if you have an hour a day, not to be on stage, but an hour to write. And
yeah.
so basically, what's the equivalent of doing 100 push-ups a day for your comedy chest? What exercises, drills, writing techniques, brainstorming ideas, what would you operationalize for a young comic to do if they have an hour a day?
Okay, I would say like obviously all the other stuff I was saying about writing all that negative stuff down, but if you really want to compartmentalize to 1:30, 2:30, I do this thing now where I'll listen to a random podcast interview of anything. It could be from the 70s, could be historical, could be whatever. And when they ask the question, I write down what I would say. And
Oh,
yeah, a lot of times it ends up being like, let's say like I'm watching something on string theory, right? I know nothing about string theory. But if I was in that position, what would I say to backpedal out of it or whatever? And it gets my brain going. It's almost kind of a survivalist thing. So it kind of helps with your crowd work too, saying stuff off the cuff. But
hmm.
yeah.
Interesting.
I mean
Does
anything.
it
Never
kind
heard
of
of that.
does it kind of
Yeah.
trigger like your brain space, like your flow state that then helps you write later on in the hour?
Yeah, I love that you said float stage, man, because that's a big thing for me. It's like the second you can do an activity where you're not thinking is when your best ideas come up, dude. Like when you're like, that's why best ideas come up in the shower, or when you're driving or whatever, right? But like, yeah, if I watch like an old like Dick Cavett interviewing Lucille Ball, and he'll say something and I'll just pause it and say like what I will write down or say it out loud. I learn a lot from talking out loud to myself, as dumb as that sounds, dude. Like it's
Mm.
because for me, uh, it's a lot better. It's when you're at an open mic, as free as confident as you might feel at an open mic, there's still variables of people looking at you and judging. If you're just talking out loud to yourself while you're driving, there's no filter. You'd be surprised where your brain will go when literally nobody there is judging you. So it makes my brain go to like kind of crazy spaces. So, but then you find that and then you reel it back in. But like, as far as like writing wise, if you're stuck and you don't know what to write about, like the interview thing is like, and I stumbled upon that myself. I was down this rabbit hole of Dick Cavett interviews. That's why I brought up the Dick Cavett thing. I just kept pausing and just like think what I would say back in that situation. And you'd be surprised where it takes your brain. So
That's great. Yeah, I've never heard of that. Again, though, that sounds like something that has birthed itself out of your improv
Mhm.
background.
I mean, that's also the thing with comics. I mean, especially new comics, like take the improv classes, man. Like
Yeah,
it's not a dividing line of stand up versus improv, man. It's like it's way more gooier than they both want to admit to each other.
it
Because
really is.
I think improv guys sometimes look down at like the setup punch, but like sometimes when a scene is dying, you need somebody to say a line to get the lights. Like you need
Yeah.
somebody to wrap it up. That's where the comic comes into play. You can't just talk and ramble for 30 minutes and nobody laughs. I mean, it's just like there's got to be something at some point.
Well, and that's where the game comes in, where you find out where there's two worlds being combined, and you
Yeah.
start to play that together. And that's to me that's the connection between stand up and improv. Is there's always going to be a game that you spot, like what are these two worlds that are coming together, and how do I bring them together? And you bring them together differently on an improv stage than you do on a stand up stage, but you're still bringing them together. And we call that the frog bank. It's frog's not funny and a bank's not funny, but when you put a frog bank together, now it's funny. Like a
Yeah,
cartoon.
yeah. Yeah, this another thing that I learned too is like if you have like a bit, to me, if you can make a bit that's like say it's about vacuum cleaners, right? It's it's funny when you're doing the vacuum cleaner jokes, but if you can find a way to like I don't know what the word is, but to exaggerate it to like politics or like a war, it gives the joke has substance now.
Yeah.
It feels like a bit, and vice versa. If you can take politics and compare it to a vacuum
Flip it
cleaner,
to-
like
Right.
it just gives a depth that as opposed to like we've seen all the clean comics that are out now, and look, it's great to hear 10 minutes on bacon, but like I'm like, come on, dude, like the world is burning around us. Can I hear like let's you can't be that oblivious to like what's going on around you. Like it doesn't mean
Right.
you're losing your fan base, but just like stretch the muscle a little bit. I mean, my buddy who I used to write with, he would always say like, "Hey man, just because you can write a joke about anything doesn't mean you should." Like, it's the line he always tells me. I hear that all the time. He's like, if you're gonna do it, it's got to be worth. Used to have this bit about ceiling fans, and because of him, it turned into this big allegory for race, and it works. It just feels like a joke. It doesn't feel like, hey, what's up with ceiling fans? It doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. But that's what he was so great at. Is like, dude, that's so corny. Let's fix it. And that's because of him.
I love that. Yeah, I love that to bring depth into it. You
Yeah.
go small to big and big to small, and
Yeah.
and now you're adding another level to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
The vocabulary, like the vocabulary word allegory. Do you use that word on stage? Would a crowd get allegory?
I don't even know. I'm sure I slipped it in there every now and again. I don't even know I may not be using it right. I still confuse metaphor and simile. One of them is the like as, and one of them is like, I don't even know. Like,
Well, simile is like, and metaphor is. So
Exactly.
so you would say X is likewise a
I
simile.
told you I hit my ceiling in 11th grade. I told you this.
Right?
I told you
That's okay. Well, you all you have to know is how to use the weapon, not how it's designed.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for
Thanks for having me,
for
man.
this interview. What a lot of great, useful stuff for our audience, and I feel like I know you better, man.
I know it was fun. It was fun, but I was a little too sideways tipsy to really appreciate the conversations when we hung out at
Oh, when we
Club.
hung out, I thought you meant now. I was like, you
No,
don't
no,
seem
no, no, not now. No, at the comedy club because like they just kept throwing us stuff, man. So I was like,
It's funny, isn't it, how comics drink for free usually, and you just it's hard to say no. It's
I
the
mean,
free
if
stuff.
you're good, if you're not, like
They charge you double.
there's a lot of thirsty dudes in this scene. A lot of dehydrated, fully functional livers in this scene.
Like,
That's
what the hell? Well, thank you, and I'll send you a link when we get this up and running, and I'll see you at the club.
cool. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks a
Paul.
lot.
All right, thanks, guys. Bye.
That was great. I really like some of his writing techniques. They're very easily operationalizable for new
Yeah,
comics.
it's so refreshing to hear someone that has those types of tactics.
Yeah, I mean, anyone could easily write down anything funny you said, just write it down throughout the day and just see where that goes to.
Anything that
Um,
bothers you.
and bothers you, yeah. And then I really I never heard the idea of answering someone else's interview questions, but it just forces you to work on the spot and get your brain into a creative zone.
Yeah, yeah. Anything to like prevent blank page syndrome. Just get the words out.
Seems like his first year wasn't wasted. Like he knew he was going to find his lens. He knew he wasn't going to do hack stuff, and he had someone saying, "Hey, don't do the hack stuff." So
Yeah.
it's like he fast forwarded. It seemed like his first year was very productive or efficient. Or
I always have a lot of admiration for guys like Paul who have that level of integrity about their comedy. I started out and I was doing whatever would make people laugh, I would do it. And I had to learn slowly, like some things are best not done.